It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to big names in the world of showbiz, sport, politics, business and beyond. And often I speak to simply people that have a big story to tell. Tonight's conversation is going to be a really difficult one. Martyn Hett was one of 22 people tragically killed in the devastating Manchester Arena bombing attack. On the 22nd of May 2017, an Islamist extremist detonated a homemade bomb as people were leaving the Manchester Arena following a concert by American singer Ariana Grande. 23 people died, including the attacker, and 1,017 people were injured, some of them children. Since Martyn's tragic and appalling death, his mother, Figen Murray, has campaigned for a change in the law. She's calling it Martyn's Law. She actually enrolled at university and studied for her master's in counter-terrorism, and she's now urging the government to consider legislating Martyn's Law, which would see large venues making better provision for potential terror incidents. Well, I'm delighted to say Figen joins me now. Hi, Figen.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me on the programme. Can we just talk about Martyn first? What kind of guy was he?
Absolutely hilarious. He cracked a joke a minute. He saw the funniest things in the most mundane things and made everybody laugh.
Yeah. So popular. And what were his interests? What was he good at?
He loved pop music, unfortunately, I have to say, which very sadly led to his death because he went to a pop concert. He just loved Coronation Street, which explains the tattoo on his leg. That is a picture of Deirdre Barlow behind bars. Yeah, he just lived for Coronation Street and for pop music.
Isn't that wonderful? So he had a Deirdre Barlow tattoo, and therefore obviously a character, and I guess a bit of an individual, a bit of a one-off.
Yeah, he was certainly one of a kind, definitely.
Well, let's talk about what you're doing in his memory, which is so impressive. You want to see legislation which will force businesses, large venues, to actually have a plan for any potential terror attack. And you've actually been to university to educate yourself. So tell me more about your degree.
So the reason I did the degree is because I, very naively until the day Martyn died, I made the assumption, probably like a lot of other people, that terrorism doesn't really happen to us as individuals. It happens in London, it happens abroad with school shootings, etc. But it doesn't happen in my world, and that was my belief. And when it did happen and Martyn was killed, I just ashamedly had to admit to myself that I knew zero, literally zero, about terrorism. And I felt that terrorism, the ideology, had become my enemy. And the best way to deal with your enemy is to get to know its ways of working, its weaknesses, its strengths. You need to understand your enemy. And that is why I joined the university and did a 2-year master's in counter-terrorism. And I'm happy to say I'm a lot wiser now.
Well, that's fantastic, and big congratulations on that achievement.
Thank you.
What did you learn from that course about counter-terrorism?
Well, it confirmed something I had felt right from the start. Although I knew nothing about terrorism, I kept asking myself questions as to why somebody would do these acts, why somebody would actually kill themselves, take loads of other people with them. I wanted to understand why, and I kept thinking in those early days before I started my training that it must be a social problem. It must be created through and by society, and it has to be dealt with through society. And when I did my training, my whole learning kind of confirmed what I thought.
And how would we go about de-radicalising people? Because, I mean, not only have you acquired, obviously, a lot of knowledge from doing this counter-terrorism degree, but you've worked in counselling and psychology yourself already, haven't you? So you've got some insight into the human soul.
Yeah, well, that was my job until Martyn died. I was a psychotherapist for about 22, 23 years. And unfortunately, I had to step down from that job when Martyn died. I just don't feel able to do it anymore.
Yeah, but I would have thought that you're bringing some of that skill set, some of that insight into your understanding of radicalization.
Definitely. And, I've really thought about why people get radicalized, how they get radicalized. And that led me then to working with young people. Despite COVID and despite attending the Arena inquiry 4 days a week, I've managed to, in the last 2-3 years, to reach about 14,000 children, either in person or via Zoom link at schools. This year, the inquiry is about to finish this week, or our attendance is going to be finished at least. And my intention is that hopefully COVID permitting, I want to reach this year, by the end of this year, I want to reach 100,000 children. That is visiting secondary schools, colleges and universities.
So how do we go about preventing people from being radicalized? How do we stop it from happening in the first place, do you think?
I think, to me, the key is education, educating adults, but mainly young people who will in actual fact become the future adults in not that many years. So the better informed people are about the dangers, how radicalizers approach you, what the sort of things they say, how they go about accessing people, who they target, all of that is stuff that I teach young people so that they are aware. And I also teach them about how to access support if either they themselves or a friend of theirs might be in the process of being radicalized. And to me, education is absolute key.
And what sorts of things would you say to them by way of avoiding being radicalized? Because let's be honest, it's probably similar to grooming, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And unfortunately, terrorism recruiters use the same tactics. They start initially just chatting online. They start befriending. They look for weaknesses and chinks in your armor. They target people who are vulnerable, who might have, in particular, young people, bullying issues or problems at home, conflict with parents or peer groups. Anybody who is in the slightest bit vulnerable, they can target. So I think understanding how these people operate can go a long way in looking after yourself and keeping yourself safe. If it doesn't feel right in your gut instinct, it probably isn't right.
Prevention is clearly the way forward. Is it possible to de-radicalise someone? Because there are experts that say that's not possible. And we haven't we, seen high-profile examples of people that claimed to have recovered and they've embraced peace, and then they go on to attack again?
Sure, there'll always be people who are, in inverted commas, de-radicalised and then they're not. But I actually, over the course of the last 3 years, have met people who were extremists and they are now doing exactly the opposite. And that's both in the UK and abroad.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear that. Tell me about the bears.
The bears.
I love these bears. Now, you actually knit these bears. Is that right? Do you make these bears?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do knit them. And initially that was something I started before Martyn died. In fact, I lost my hearing 60% on one of my ears. And because I was a therapist, that was quite upsetting for me. And I felt quite down about it. So I started knitting because I used to always tell my clients, if you feel depressed, do something creative. It really helps. And I found knitting really, really helped me. So I did it for my own therapeutic purposes initially, wrote a therapeutic storybook as well about 16 bears with mental health issues. That book is called Bears Have Issues Too. And when Martyn died, I decided to make the bears my peace bears, because I felt that the world needs tolerance, kindness, forgiveness, peace, love, and the bears symbolize all of that. So I post them all over the world, literally.
That's remarkable. I know that they can be acquired on your website. I'll give the details out very shortly. Tell me about Jordan the bear, a particularly special one.
I wish I could show him, but he's actually just on his way back from Dubai. He has his own Facebook page. Jordan loves traveling. So I took Jordan. He was just a normal bear that I was photographing, and I was going to London to an award ceremony, and I thought I'll photograph him at the table. When we got there, it was such a posh function, I was too embarrassed to bring him out. So I left him in my bag, but on the train back home to Manchester from London, I left him in one of the brown food bags from the train, and with a note saying that he was knitted by me, Martyn's mum, and I want to see how far he can travel, and please don't keep him for more than a few days. And that bear has literally been passed from person to person and has travelled the whole world. As I said, he's just coming back from Dubai, and he's been in China, he's been in Bali, he's been to France, to Switzerland, just anywhere. He's been in Africa, he's been all over.
He's a global celebrity. For anyone that's watching this that's going through a difficult time, or perhaps they know someone that is, can you explain why gifting them a bear might actually help, and what's the right way to actually use a bear if it's going to be therapeutic?
Well, I've had, interestingly enough, people with mental health issues, they have approached me and said something like, "Oh, I've had a miscarriage. Can you do me a bear? I need comfort." I've had people saying, "Oh, one of my children is very suicidal. Can you knit him a bear? Because I know if he puts the bear on the kitchen table, he's in a really bad place and I can go and help him." I've had people ask me to make bears with bipolar disorder because they can relate to them and they draw comfort from it. Lots of people with anxiety want them. In fact, my own dentist has one that is lent to people while they're on the dentist chair. Adults and children make use of that bear.
I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I honestly think that you're doing Martyn proud. We've only got a couple of seconds to go. I could speak to you for hours. But Martyn's Law, very briefly, I mean, I know the government are looking very seriously at actually legislating this, which will be an amazing legacy. What are the basics of Martyn's Law, Figen?
But it's purely to legislate and mandate security at public spaces and places. At the moment, security is only a recommendation, but it's not mandatory. And all I'm trying to do is bring this in as a mandatory legislation so that people, staff and visitors can be safe at venues.
Well, listen, it's remarkable what you've done. Let me tell our viewers all about your work. First of all, the book is out now and it's called Bears Have Issues Too. And your website, where these peace bears can be acquired, and also your story and Martyn's, is all at figenmurray.com, and that's spelled Figen, figenmurray.co.uk. Sorry, that's figenmurray.co.uk. Figen, a privilege to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.